Hey, property management friends, welcome to This Week in PM. I'm your host, Jeremy Pound from RentScale. It's our 5-year anniversary here at RentScale this month, and that's why I've invited a special guest today. Jordan and I go way back, and most of you that are watching the show will know exactly who I'm talking about, and I can't wait to bring him on as our featured guest today. Now, as part of our 5-year anniversary, we're also running an amazing promo. So reach out to us or whoever you work with at RentScale to see how we can help you with some special promotions to grow your company. If you don't know anybody at RentScale, just reach out to biz@rentscale.com. That's biz at rentscale.com, or check out our website. So unlike other episodes, I'm not going to spend too much time on any other notes or social media posts or news from this week because I want the maximum amount of time with my friend Jordan, our guest today. So we're going to jump right in. But first, I'm excited that we have the January scoreboard to share with you. Now, Jen is going to tell us how the property management business development community did in January to kick off 2024. How do we do, Jen?
Hey everyone, back at you with another Scale Club scoreboard update. The last time we were on, we shared our results from all of 2023 and the absolutely incredible year that our BDMs put together with total number of doors signed. Now we are in 2024, and believe it or not, somehow we are already halfway through February. So I want to share with you the results from January so that you can see how you compare to our community of business development managers. In January, we actually saw a great amount of volume considering what we typically see this time in January. It was a pretty exciting month, and I would like to especially highlight this 93% to goal at the bottom of the scoreboard. Yes, our BDMs were 93% to goal in January. We attribute this to a couple of things. First, we are getting really dialed in on helping companies figure out what predictable growth looks like and forecasting that throughout the year, each quarter, and then down to each month. And even further than that, how we figure out what activities need to happen each week. So getting that dialed in and really making sure that everyone has a great plan throughout the entire year, all the way down to the weekly activities, has been absolutely pivotal to make sure that our BDMs are not only striving for top performance, but we are forecasting predictably so that you guys can run your business with a bit of consistency. The other thing that I want to share with you guys is that while you can see that we saw drops in the average number of doors added and the lead volume, it's still pretty impressive for this time when we compare to last year. So our leaders for this month are Memphis, Tennessee at 23. You see that's down. Well, that's because this particular leader was at the top of the board in December as well, with over 120 doors in the month of December. He comes back even after emptying out his pipeline, leading our scoreboard at 23 doors this month. And we've got Grand Rapids, Michigan at 22, Chicago, Illinois at 21, Fort Worth, Texas at 18, Arizona at 16 for 274 doors across our entire community in January. Average number of doors across all members was 7, down about 7% from 8 that we saw last month. And then 11 for the top 50%. So what we consider to be our real top performers, or even the people that have been in the role for longer and have had time to prospect and really get those things going. So that was down about 15% from December, but again, 11, still a very impressive number for January, considering the trends of property management seasonality. As I said, lead volume was down. December was about 24. Now we're at 21. So we did see that decrease. But our community has been working on some pretty incredible things to keep these numbers where they're at. In fact, I would point out that although we were down in total average number of doors added for the community, it was down 7% and 15% if you look at all members and our top 50%. However, leads were down 30%, which means our community is getting really good at converting the leads that they do have and making sure that we are maximizing pipelines all the way through with proper nurture. In the month of January, our BDMs really focused in on and honed in on outbound prospecting. We've been pushing all of our members to set an outbound prospecting plan, and then we've been following up and holding accountable to make sure those activities are actually happening. If you don't have an outbound prospecting plan, it's such an important piece of overall business development, but also of lead generation. So I go back to what we were talking about in Sales Mastery, if you came that all bound theory, where we need inbound, outbound, and next bound. Our community has really stepped into the next bound and the outbound, and we're starting to get that honed in really well. If you need help building an outbound plan, please reach out to us so that we can drive that plan and some of those activities to guide you towards filling that funnel with some leads. The other thing that we've noticed is that our offers are getting more creative and more compelling, which we think is helping us close doors and actually convert business. So we have to think about that compelling offer. And it's really important that, especially if your BDMs are taking APM leads, Thumbtack, Geek, anything like that, that they know how to differentiate themselves and have a different, more critical kind of conversation when they're either on the phone, Zoom, or in person. So if you need help with any of that, please be sure to reach out. A couple of things coming up for our community. Next Friday, we've got Skill Dev, and we are very excited as we're going to be stepping into some live practice. And we are also really excited for the Learn to Love closing webinar, which I know Jeremy will share more information about on this show. All right, back to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jen. I know that our friends in Chicago, who were the perennial leaders on the leaderboard for the first year, are not happy about dropping into second and third place the last few months. But what a great job by Memphis and Grand Rapids to really rise up there and just completely start accelerating their business development. Now, I want to introduce our guest today, who's a little bit of property management royalty, depending on who you ask, and I would agree. Jordan Muela, who is the CEO of Lead Simple. This may be how you know him. He's also the co-founder of RentScale from 5 years ago, and he's also a co-founder of Profit Coach. But maybe most importantly, he's the host of the Banger podcast, the Profitable Property Manager, and not only the king of alliteration, but also my good friend and inspiration. Please welcome Jordan Muela. Jordan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be with you, brother.
Feeling good today?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm happy to jam and reminisce and reflect, talk about the future.
I see you got your Lead Simple, maybe the Lead Simple University sweatshirt. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's some custom swag here.
I like it. Not released to the public. I have the Lead Simple University one, which we love to wear. But it's amazing.
Comfy.
All right. I'm excited to ask you some questions, but I want to share some events with you, some dates, okay? So tell me what this means to you. I want you to know that I posted today on social media that you originally reached out to me, and it wasn't you. I don't know if you saw it, but the producer of your show reached out to me January of 2018. That's when you first reached out to me to talk about being on your podcast, which I thought was amazing. And if my memory serves me right, I did some research. So you reached out. And by the way, if you haven't checked out on social media, go look at the original email. It was great. It basically, I feel like, is the summation or the seed of our relationship, which was amazing. Now, we didn't actually get that podcast done until April because we scheduled it for March. I had to cancel on you because they were basically repaving the roads in my community. And it was right before the podcast. And I was like, I can't go on a podcast right now because basically they are repaving the roads. And then you had to recancel on me because you had a last minute trip. And then we finally got it done in April 11th. And so the podcast was recorded on April 11th. I think it came out several months later. And I just felt like it was such a great parallel for the universe conspiring to make sure we got this thing done, right? So much happened. There were so many reasons why it couldn't have got done, but it got done. And then we got together, and in February of 2019, so I want to talk about, I want to get back in our DeLorean and time travel back to 2019. You came up, I think it was in January, came up with the name RentScale, and we went out, registered the domain, we launched the company, we started staffing up, And what a ride it's been since then. So I just wanted to run those dates by you and set the stage. Any reminiscing back from those crazy days and what was going on in your life?
Yeah, the key was the introduction through a mutual friend. That's what I recall, was the mutual introduction, which was Jaron Kelly. Is that right?
And Conrad. Jaron, yeah.
Jaron and Conrad, who somehow, for some reason, wanted to make an introduction and felt like you and I should know each other. And turned out that was a good idea. So we had some initial interaction, and I thought, I like this guy. This guy seems sharp. And that's about it. I'm not really enjoyed the phone call, but really not sure what else to do here. And then it was like, oh, you know what? At a minimum, let's jam out on the podcast.
Yeah.
Had a great time. And then things just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, that's right. I remember we enjoyed seeing entrepreneur. I think there was a lot of that, it's just like, hey, I love what you're doing. I said, hey, here's how I'm growing. I remember that conversation was very productive, and it's very much in the spirit of what we still do today. It's like, hey, what are you doing to grow? What are you leveling up? What are you thinking about? Right. Like immediately we got on the phone and we were having those conversations, which is why I think we were basically created that kinship right away. And then you invited me and you had me on the podcast, which was a lot of fun. I had a great time. And the story that, I've probably distorted over so many years was the next day I woke up and I had like 6 leads on my website, which was not for property managers, but it was from all of your clients and saying, hey, I saw you on Jordan's podcast yesterday. It was amazing. Let's do business. And the next thing I know, I called you back and I said, hey, I think I got 6 of your clients as my clients. And you're like, great. That's because they need you. So it was just amazing to see what happens when that all comes together. So put yourself in the time machine, right? Let's think back to 2018, 2019. I mean, let's talk about it. Pre-COVID, this is back in the PM Grow days, which, you were really bringing a lot to the industry. That's what I observed. I observed that you were like putting the industry on your back and going up a hill, and saying, guys, there's so much opportunity here. There's so much we can do. We can actually bring this together. And I feel like I'm only slightly exaggerating, Jordan, but watching you do all that, bringing me in, bringing Danny in from Profit Coach, you must have saw something. So indulge me, bring me back to like 2018. Like where were you at? What was happening? What was going through your mind?
What was driving my thinking was realizing that I was just the next step in this journey. I started off working for a venture-backed homeowners association company. And then I got into the lead generation game. And then I realized that people weren't calling the leads and the follow-up was weak. So it was like, hey, let's build the CRM. Did that, realized that a lot of folks didn't know much about sales and marketing. So I thought, hey, let's put on a conference on sales and marketing, do some education. At some point, I realized that you could grow your business and still not actually make any money, which was really bizarre and disheartening for me to realize. So it was like, well, hey, let's talk about finance and profitability. And then I ended up meeting you, and I saw all the unrealized needs around the sales process. So it was just a logical evolution of pressing as deep as possible into the problem to get to the bottom line. I feel really drawn and compelled toward that, is to get as close to the metal of the outcome that clients want, rather than being satisfied with like being kind of abstracted a couple levels away from it.
If you don't mind, I just want to drive down on that. What do you mean by not being abstracted? Like you felt like they knew they had a need, but they couldn't get it done, or you felt like they didn't realize a need and you felt like you could help them with that? Like, I just want to, really dive deep on that. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, let me port a metaphor from advertising. In advertising, there's conversation about an eyeball, a click, a conversion, a contract signing. You can make money at any segment. You can sell eyeballs, you can sell clicks, you can sell contracts. My disposition is to go as deep into that funnel as possible, ideally to the actual like signed contract, for 2 reasons. Number one, it helps me understand the scope of the needs better. It really gets me involved in the guts. I like absorbing the risk of getting closer to the bare metal. And my belief is that there's greater economic reward in doing so. So for me, my career was like going from selling leads to the CRM to education to finance, just pressing as deep into the problem as possible.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. And you remind me, I now remember, pre-RenScale days when I came on this scene, you were really deep on the leads and you were doing so much. So that makes a lot of sense. You were trying to make sure you had a solution for every problem through the funnel, right? And I love that.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we're going to talk about what's changed in the last 5 years, because I think it's exciting. Although I'll just precurse and say, I mean, the fundamentals probably never changed, just people's sophistication within that changes, right? So getting some great comments on the live. Peter Lohman said he reached out right after he saw the podcast. I started thinking about first 10 clients. I want you to put yourself in the shoes, thinking back around who our clients were in 2018, 2019. So Peter Lohman, first 10 clients, Ben Sensenbaugh, 1836 Realty, like all these clients that you clearly, knew that they wanted to do something a little more exciting than everybody else. They wanted to level up. I just want we to think, like, have the operators changed since then? The people that you were doing business with in 2018, 2019, were they outliers? Was it the fringe? Were they, like, nobody understand what they were doing? Have they changed? Has the people that you deal with now changed? Like, I think the industry is made up of the people. Let's just be honest. Like, there's no other way to say that. The industry are the people, the entrepreneurs driving it forward. I think that you and I have had many conversations about how much we love those people. Some people just really have a bigger vision. Other people are just trying to hang on by their claws and just trying to get through it. What's changed about the people that you deal with, the same people that have grown and the new people that you're experiencing 5 years later?
I would say that it's the same cast of characters. The depth of connection that I've wanted to have with customers, that was another justification. I wanted to be really deep in my relationships with customers. And when you're selling $10 per lead, you can't justify getting that close, right? You could take somebody out to a nice dinner and be negative for the next 3 years of your operating budget. I wanted to be able to be really deep and connected, particularly with those customers that were killing it and that I like and admire. And that's exactly what happened. I can think of a long list of clients that I was able to graduate from kind of doing something useful to really making a significant impact for and becoming great friends along the way. Folks that I have deep personal relationships with. So the faces are pretty similar. What we've done with those relationships has shifted over time. I would say that the industry overall has gotten way more sophisticated than it was previously. And that was always the idea. That was always the point, was how do we take outside ideas from other industries, fancy Fortune 500 ideas, port them here, make them applicable and useful here. And I feel like that there has been a lot of progress. So the average operator's IQ, in my mind, has gone up significantly. And a lot of that is a function of just having more interesting conversations about sales and marketing, about finance, about leadership. A lot of this is just like the expression of what I find, for me, of just what I find interesting. I've got to be interested in the work and connect with it in order to have stamina in the conversation. So it's been just as much me discovering where my interests lie as it has asking what's going to be useful now.
All right, I'm going to be disciplined and not use the where your interests lie conversation, because I feel like that's a whole entrepreneurial conversation that we can run into. It will take us way off topic, but I love that. And I do think there's a whole nother episode in that, Jordan. So let's put a pin in that. Let's talk about how important it is for the entrepreneur to be passionate about the leadership and the vision that they're going through. I love that. But I want to pick up on something that I wasn't prepared to talk about, but that's what these conversations are so great about. And that is, I remember when you brought me in, I was helping people in a variety of industries grow. And I had a track record of meeting somebody, learning the industry in about a month, and then showing them, hey, here's the basics of sales and marketing and the fundamentals. But I remember you bringing me in, I got a lot of heat for not being a property manager. There was a lot of insider, like, nobody from outside the industry has any business telling us how to grow the company. But that's what I think you've like traversed really well. And, isn't like, do you feel like that's changed? Because I just remember 5 years ago, there was this like giant focus on, we only need to be working with people that run property managers, and we can't learn anything from outside the industry. And unless they've done it, they don't understand our business. Like, don't you remember those days 5 years ago, like how permeating that was?
Yeah, it's natural for things for people to be a little bit tribal and territorial. And I think that's all that understandable. I think what's opened up for people is just realizing there are areas where that is very much true. Jeremy, me and you are capable of reasoning from first principles to think about leasing application screening criteria. I could sit, think about that, and work my way towards something that seems coherent, read about it, interview people, and then bam, speak to that. You don't see me doing that, and I have no intention of doing it. That is a level of operational depth and specificity that is best left to somebody that is doing that, boots on the ground, in the weeds, and has that firsthand context. That is not true about PM finance. In fact, in my experience was that in many cases, the least informed people about PM finance were the PMs that were dealing with finances. Bringing in outside ideas and outside voices to speak to something that is fundamentally generic in nature, like finance, that's an obvious huge step forward and huge amount of value add. So I think it's really contextual based on what exactly it is we're talking about, and kind of keeping those lanes clear. That's what works for me.
That's fantastic. I think you and I had that exact thread of logic when we got together and said, hey, maybe the best thing that could ever happen is somebody could just be a purist on finance or sales and marketing, and they can bring it in and they can learn an industry, and they can basically say, hey, this is what you do, and we can apply this to that. And I think it's worked really well. I think, without underselling what you've done, I think you've built a career on that, right? You've built a career, like you said, on saying, here's a methodology or a discipline or a tactics that work, and Venn diagram. I know the industry. Let's apply that. Let's shortcut everybody so they don't have to go out there. So we don't need 500 or 5,000 property managers going out there, learning this discipline, deciding how it works out. I've just watched you do that. And I'd say that that's a really cool thing that I've observed and that you've helped me be a part of, is like, I know this one thing really well. And if I just focus on the industry, I can learn that pretty fast. I can overlap that, and I can shortcut this for 500 people instead of waiting around for it to organically happen, right? Because evolution takes millions of years. We can get this done in a couple of years, right? And so it's an analogy that I've seen you do it. And so I just want to say you've done an awesome job at doing that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I see you doing it too. You brought in some background of other people that had done something similar. I think about some of the EO people that you roll with, Iron Man Jack as an example. How could somebody possibly think that a guy like what Iron Man Jack has to offer would be limited by virtue of the industry? Like, it's universal in nature. It's pretty obvious. And there are other metaphors for this. And I think EO is another great one, where they're bringing people in across industry from different industries to speak to different industries. And there's obviously no hang up or limitation because the industry is different.
Great. And just for listeners at home, you'll hear us, how about you, all the time. Stands for Entrepreneurs Organization. It's an amazing company, largest entrepreneur organization group in the world. If your business is doing over $1 million, I cannot recommend it enough. Just search EO in your city, and they're in most towns. And you need a reference to get in. If you need one, reach out. I'll be happy to give you one. Cannot recommend it enough. It's been pivotal for me. So I met Jack, who Jordan was just talking about. And a lot of what I've learned in my career has been through that. So Jordan, I'm thinking through and I don't want to spend too long on this. And if you just, say, hey, this isn't that relevant to us, I totally get that. But I'm thinking through 5 years ago, the people that you introduced me to, the clients that you introduced me to, had many years of experience. And so this was 2018, 2019. they had kind of been through the great financial crisis. They had been through the industry forging kind of experience that we all had, where nobody could sell their home. Homes were useless. And so they started renting them. And then they needed property managers. And that's not the only reason the industry was started, but that was a catalyst, right? It was an accelerator for the industry, was kind of that great financial crisis. So when I think back to like the early days when we worked together, everybody that I worked with, like when I was helping them write their playbook or interviewing them about like, why do clients hire you? Everything was about not being able to sell your home, just being able to hold on to it. Just being able to like manage the property so that people would actually pay rent. It was a very defensive space, and it was great. It's how they built their company. So when they hired us, they were 500, 600, 700 doors. They had been in business for, I don't know, 5, 8 years at that point. They had the knowledge. They probably didn't have any competitors. Like I think back to some of our friends that we've had and we shared as early clients, and like they were the only game in town in a lot of these places. Then over 5 years, you fast forward, and then I remember going and giving presentations on like how to talk to your investors to get them not to sell their property. Why selling your property in 2021 was the worst thing you could ever do, and how it's actually still underpriced and it would actually go up. And so now all of the business development language was about having a conversation about asset value and how great this was, and wealth, and things just got more and more sophisticated. And so to oversimplify, I think about it, it's like, we used to be like, hey, how do I just make sure your house doesn't get trashed? How do I just make sure I can get a tenant and get your rent collected? To how do I help you build a portfolio, and how do I help you actually do this thing and become more sophisticated? Almost all the way back to 180 degrees when we think about, the great freeze up. Nobody wants to sell their home at a 3% mortgage, and it's all these accidental landlords. I'm just thinking about, I'm way oversimplifying, right, Jordan? But you see where I'm going. The market itself has changed so much since I've been around, and you were here before. Any trends you see out of that? Any recommendations for people watching? Because I mean, it doesn't matter how much vendors like you and I show up, and how great Lead Simple processes are, and how great of a playbook I can write, how amazing a job Danny can do about making you profitable. The market is the market, and this thing's moving fast, right? So how much do you think about that? Or do you think it just doesn't matter and good operators are just going to get it figured out?
Well, I do think the good operators are going to figure it out no matter what. That's 100% the truth. And the market has gotten more sophisticated. There's been a trend over the last 15 years for single family homes as an asset class to begin to mirror and have parity with multifamily residential returns. Multifamily, the fundamentals are different. The units are closer together. They're not detached. They're of a similar stock nature and caliber. You can have on-site property managers. They're more uniform in nature. So it's made sense historically that the returns there are more uniform and are able to be optimized to a finer degree. Over the last 10 to 15 years, that's happened in single family. Institutional has come in a heavy way. They've overlaid a different set of priorities and goals. And I think that sophistication that's brought has been pushed down onto SFR operators, in part because they're working with institutionals as clients, and in part because there's more buyers and there's more M&A in this space. And when M&A happens, the prospective sellers tend to get more aware of what they have and what they need to do in order to maximize the yield and the returns on the underlying asset. So I would say a return-oriented focus has been newer over the last 10 years. And I'm really proud and grateful that conversation has emerged.
That's in M&A becoming that people see the property management operator as a viable business worth investing in. That's an asset.
Exactly.
The asset in your definition, because I want to clarify this, because I think that most of us think asset as the property that we're investing in, but the asset is the property management company and the contracts and the doors they're managing. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, the contracts and the free cash flow that they kick off.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's such an easily overlooked parallel, Jordan. I love this because most of our clients got into the business because they knew about the value of assets. in terms of real estate. And they're just like, buy assets, cash flow. And then now, 5 years later, and I'm saying 5 years because that's when I showed up, many years later, it's like the parallel is almost complete. It's like the property management company is the smart people created contracts and assets that people wanted to follow. It's like almost the same thing, right? That they've turned their property management company into cash flowing assets. And it's easily overlooked in the day-to-day operation, right? But I think that's what you guys do a great job of on the profit coach side and thinking through. And I know we've had many shared clients sell their companies. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's not really a parallel I had observed before this call, consciously, maybe subconsciously, but I assure you, you're going to see it in a ton of my content going forward because
all right, right on.
It's actually like a really great point. It's a little heady for a lot of people to get their heads wrapped around, but I think if we should work together on that and explain that. All right. So jumping forward, this is our space. This is what we do. The vendors, right? Listen, just for the people at home watching, and love to see your comments on live. If you got any questions for Jordan, please let me know. I was on my third business when I met Jordan. I had been around conferences, trade shows. I can't tell you how many things I went to. And this son of a gun, this guy brought me in and he's just like, hey, when we have a conference, we throw the best party. We make sure everybody sees what we're doing. They make sure that they're having a good time. And we throw great educational events as well. If we're going to do anything, it's in service of the industry. I will say, Jordan, you've heard me say this, but I want to let everyone know at home, this guy wakes up every single day and thinks about adding value to you in multiple terms, not just in a service provider mentality, but also in a party provider mentality, right? We threw some really great parties, throw the grill, all kinds of ideas. I don't think I knew what I was getting into when you were like, hey, come to Vegas. We're going to do a RentScale launch party. I just didn't know what we were doing. So vendors are a key component of this industry, not just people like you and I that are adding services, but actual key components of the product. When you think about financial engineering, like some of the insurance products out there, what some people are doing with like maintenance and, software, what, pet screening has done to completely revolutionize things. Like vendors are actually part of the product. So how have you seen vendors make an impact on the industry over the last 5 years? And do you feel like that's going to continue, or do you feel like that's kind of maxed out?
Oh, I think it's going to continue to happen. Vendors will be critical. What's going on there? Man, it's been a lot of shift. I just know that when I first started, vendors were in the background, and it was more like a transactional service provider kind of situation. And now I think the shift has been vendors realize that they can lead, they can be a part of the party, they can throw a great party. And so much more has opened up. It's so much more of an enriching relationship. And I've gotten a ton of value and stimulation out of seeing other peers show up and make the industry better, make the pool of industry vendors better, raising the bar through better education, through better events, through better sponsorships. All that stuff, I think, is just going to continue to ratchet up. And it's just a function of what is it a function of? It's a function of CAC, customer acquisition cost, and LTV, lifetime value. As lifetime values expand, CAC also expands. It's rational for it to do so. We tend to talk about how to get the lowest CAC, but the reality is the person with the highest tolerable CAC tends to win. And the only way to do that is to raise your lifetime value. So as the economic opportunity for vendors has expanded over time, and as individual vendors have figured out how to expand wallet share, they've gained even greater financial ability to contribute and to push back into the industry. Second Nature is probably the mother of all examples here. They started off selling air filters, and now there's 10, 20, 30 different services. So could they have been Second Nature and thrown great parties when they were just selling air filters? Probably not. No, it was probably the business model that also needed to expand in order to give rise and permission to that full lean in. So that's the economic piece. The other piece is just intention. People just caring, giving a damn, realizing that you can lead and have a great time and throw great parties and make these lifetime relationships. So I think all of that is just going to continue to bloom and expand over time. I don't think it's going to go away, nor do I think it's peaked. I'm committed to continuing to show up and blow up at new levels over the next decade.
I know it. And I remember when you said, hey, you got all these clients that are coming, my clients need you. I was already operating a very similar business that was not property management focused. Juicy Results. If you ever get a calendar invite from us, you'll know where that comes from. And you said, hey, we can't just be a generalist. Like, I'm here to serve this industry. You were really passionate and said, can't just be a generalist. Like, we got to serve it. I want a team that just knows these as clients. I want to go all in. And I was like, well, that just seems a little bit more bold than I was expecting. But I was like, but it works. And I understand that's just a fantastic little symbol of your commitment to the industry, right? You didn't want to be bringing people in who were like, yeah, I'll put 20% of my resources towards property management, right? You wanted people to show up and be like, here's the property management event calendar, and we will not miss a single event. So, kudos to you. I watched you do that, and you said it, and I thought, this is a little crazy. And it reminds, by the way, there's a whole little lesson there for entrepreneurs that putting 1 foot in doesn't exactly have 50% of the value of putting 2 foot in, right? It is like an exponential return when you focus on somebody. And just a shout out for anybody watching this as an entrepreneur, which is most of our listeners, can't say that enough. And so it's up to you guys to find that in your business and how that works for you. But going all in a community and really owning that, I mean, Jordan, that's just a lesson I've learned from you that I don't think I want to build a business without that lesson again. So, all right, let me push ahead. Let's talk about predictions. I build this as, is the golden age of property management over? Because we've got some clients that are selling, got some clients that are saying, hey, it's just not what it used to be. I was the only game in town. Now there's 16 people that look just like me. I want you to take the hat off of I sell picks and shovels during the gold rush, and I don't need people to keep buying my Lead Simple processes and my profit coach. Take it off. Would you start a property management business today? Right? Is it the golden age over, or is it still a great time to be in the business?
I think it's arguably gotten better over the last couple of years. I mean, granted, you have realtors hanging their shingle and coming in, but on the whole, the industry has become way more operationalized. More than ever, there's capital coming in, recognizing the intrinsic value of this type of business. More than ever, there are clear examples of the free cash flow potential that these businesses represent. It rewards discipline-focused operators, less so charisma, right? That's more like the transactional brokerage side. But this is a business where you can build enduring value, something that really can and will stand the test of time. And certainly would never pretend like it's easy, but I just feel like this is even beyond it being recession proof. And I think we saw that more or less is the case. One of my huge takeaway from COVID was it was so scarring and it was such a massive inconvenience. And there was so much emotional baggage in getting through that. And yet, if you look at the underlying P&Ls, COVID was a blip. COVID didn't send people into the gutter. It was not the apocalyptic business event that so many people feared. There's a lot of other industries where that's not true. It really did just massive damage. PM largely came out way less affected than other industries. So from the resilience demonstrated there, from the resilience being demonstrated right now, it just tends to be a very durable asset class in terms of the types of businesses that you can start. And there's an anti-fragile component to it, where the more regulation that we see in the space, for many operators, for the best, most disciplined operators, regardless of their politics or their free market, Keynesian or lack thereof economic outcome, regardless of what you think about regulation, most of the best operators will tell you that they can see that is a moat. Not everybody is going to be able to swim in those waters. And those that are left have a situation that is even more ripe for professional property management. professional property management. What does that mean? It's been ambiguous. It hasn't always been clear. Designations don't always make that clear. You know what does make that clear? Seeing somebody going into receivership because they didn't follow the law. They didn't know the difference between how to handle trust accounts. They didn't know the difference between tenant screening criteria. They didn't know how to deal with Section 8 tenants, et cetera. That makes it real clear who's a professional and who's not. And that's another very odd characteristic. Whereas governmental involvement and regulation increases, the best operators actually get even more entrenched in their position. So there's a lot to like about this industry from my vantage point.
Could not agree more. I'm going to hold off on some of my comments here because I want to hear from you, and I only got a little time left. Let's talk about the clients. Talk about the people that are hiring property managers today. It seems like it's changed a lot. So going forward, looking forward in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm seeing the industry growing. I'm seeing my friends say, you know what, maybe I don't need to put all my money in 401k. Maybe I need to be a real estate investor. Maybe when I sell my house, I don't need to move out. Have you thought at all about like what our clients are going to look like in the next couple of years?
You know, I wouldn't pretend to have a crystal ball to know where things are going to go. My deep fundamental belief is that we are in a housing crisis, and I personally don't have a ton of optimism that that's going to shift anytime in the near future. It's a worry and it's a concern, but you didn't ask me for a political commentary here. My probabilistic estimation is that housing is going to continue to be constrained, and that the availability of housing and the correlated demand from renters is the key driver of the positioning of our clients' prosperity and their ability to continue to make money in the way that they do. So from that perspective, that doesn't seem like it's very likely to change in a direction that would harm property managers anytime soon.
Jordan, for my selfish purpose, for the need of clips on social media, could you give us your political prognostication? I mean, I think there's something to come out of that. Let's make this thing really exciting.
No, not today. Not today. No, I ain't taking the bait. I ain't taking the bait on that one.
I was afraid you wouldn't. All right, last question on that, because I think anyone watching this, I can't think of somebody else that I'd want to ask this question about more. And I'm sorry if I'm overlooking anyone, but I know a lot of people in this industry, and there's one question that I wouldn't want to ask anybody more than you about this, and that is, how do you see technology changing the industry over the next handful of years? Maybe it's this year, maybe it's 3 years from now. What do you just feel really confident about? And what are you betting on, or what are you advising clients to bet on when it comes to technology?
The thing that I'm betting on is that the new generation of operators coming into this industry and the new generation of working professionals that are staffing property management companies are going to become increasingly comfortable with technology. Not necessarily even at the level of just learning how to use a new piece of software, but willing to develop a mental model and a mental construct about the data and the architecture and the workflows within the business. Their willingness to do that, which maps 1-to-1 or maybe slightly behind the right kind of technology that allows that disposition to be rewarded and directed towards greater levels of efficiency, less toil. Toil is actually a technical term developed by Google, and it refers to more or less what you would expect is ugly, unpleasant, unnecessary tasks that could likely be eliminated through automation. I think as all that happens, we're just going to see more work disappearing, being eliminated, being transformed. Certain tasks that are, their existence is really just a result of the fact that a technological solution hasn't arisen to allow them to be dispatched. We see those use cases getting consumed by all the vendors that are coming into this space. So I see more money coming into the space, more tech, greater appetite and willingness to harness that technology. The only X factor outside of my general rosy outlook on this is what is going to be the role of disruptive technologies like AI. And I would say that from my current vantage point, having just a little bit of that initial hype cycle out of the way, I remain quite bullish on what is going to be possible there. I don't think that it's going to happen all at once, but I think slowly but surely, individual use cases are on an increasing basis, not going to be helped, but be transformed up until the point of simply going away as a result of a breakthrough in technology. That's what I'm seeing.
You know, when I hear you say that, Jordan, it just reminds me so much. I'm just a few years older than you, but it's a very pivotal few years older because you and I have talked about my coming of age during the internet boom. And this just very much reminds me of, people like the loud people see the opportunity and they're screaming it so loud that everybody thinks it's going to happen overnight. And if you look back to the internet boom, I remember being so involved in it and thinking like, why would not everybody do this? But then, people got so far over their skis. Then there was this giant like correction, and then like perception almost went backwards on it. And they were like, see, we told you that stuff wasn't going to work. And then eventually the technology was just too powerful. And so what happened in maybe 5 years, people thought was going to happen in 6 months or a year. But it did happen, and it was impossible to deny. But it took smart people with a lot of hard work and a lot of vision, a lot of perseverance to actually make it happen. I mean, look at Amazon stock. I mean, Jeff Bezos clearly knew what he was doing. But if you would have zoomed in on any web search about Amazon in 2002, 2003, he would look like he was the biggest, on the wrongest side of history ever. Right. But I think that that's just kind of my takeaway when I think about AI is it's clearly going to change things, but it's not just a bunch of let's just throw some AI powder on here and some AI powder on here, and nobody has to do any hard work and it's all going to work out. Would you agree with that? I mean, this is going to take there's an opportunity here, but it's going to take hard work to actually pull this off.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the previous craze around crypto and blockchain is a great parallel here. You saw that there was an extreme amount of grift that took place in that whole ecosystem. And the most ripe targets for grift is when there was an extreme enthusiasm for the technology, but a poor understanding of the underlying use case. And I've seen that happen in a number of places, including in our industry, where somebody shows up, slaps AI on it, and is able to benefit in the near term from hysteria and hype. I think we're going to know that we're actually getting somewhere when we see pre-existing mainstream solutions targeting mainstream use cases where there are meaningful gains. And I don't think we're too far away from that. We're seeing that come up with chat back and forth and leasing and maintenance type situations. There's some value there. Has that been transformative? No, it's been an incremental kind of efficiency. Accounting is another area I think about, particularly with all the compliance around trust accounting. Is trust accounting compliance or oversight ever going to go away? No. Could meaningful parts of that job be automated with some QA layered on top? I think that's probably a likely possibility in the future. So totally agree. It's not all at once. There's definitely some grift that we're going to see on the front side. But it's just the cost of doing business with new innovation.
Could not agree more. I mean, I think we've seen it, at our age, we've seen these technology revolutions come through, some clear patterns there, excitement, exuberance, grift. I love that term. It definitely happens. Just want to give you the final floor. I want to thank you for being here, Jordan. I've asked you about predictions, what's coming. You've shared a lot. Is there anything else you want to share before we sign off?
No, man, last thing I would just share is that it's been a great ride. I've enjoyed partnering with you. The conversation that I remember having you with the early days was about essence over form. We were talking about biz dev and what we could do, and it could look like this and it could look like that. And I just remember talking about essence over form. Form is the structure, form is the container, the parameters, but the essence is what are we up to? And the essence of the collaboration I've always had with you was about adding value, pressing deeper into the problem, and getting clear on what moves us as individuals, what lights us up, and sharing that with the community and building community around that. And that's been a real joy, man. I really enjoyed working with you over these last however many years.
I had a blast myself, my friend. We really become good friends. Watch your girls grow up. You've watched my life transitions. 5 years is a significant amount of time. And how you spend those 5 years change that amount of time, right? It can either seem like a blip on a radar if you're just going sideways, but watch you move forward. Watch you do so much. You helped us do so much. And I agree with that sentiment. What's amazing to me about what you're doing for this industry, and I'd like to fancy that I do a little bit of it. And I definitely want to shout out to so many other vendors, friends, and other leaders that we know, is there's so many people just bringing vision to this industry. And that's so important, right? You bring so much vision that you don't get paid for. And you bring so much work that you don't get paid for. And I just want to say to all of our property management friends watching this, thank you to Jordan. Thank you for bringing vision, bringing me in, bringing Danny from Profit Coach in. Who knows how much else you've done, all the other things. And I know it's not just you, and I know you don't want to just, take complete credit for everything, but I've watched it and you've brought vision in. And I think that there's a lesson there for anybody watching this. They've got their own client base. They've got their tribe that they serve. And yes, we can lower costs. We can bring technology in, but is there anything more valuable that we can do other than just bringing vision to them? Like that's it, right? Like that is probably the highest, most valuable use of our time, is bring them that vision. So thank you for doing that. Thank you so much. Really have appreciated that and been inspired by that. Thank you for the time today. What do you want people to do? Where do they find you? What do you want them to do? Want them to wire you money? If you want to give the bank account, if you want them to follow you on social media, whatever you want to do, where do you want to leave our guests with?
I have no asks here. Go do an act of kindness to somebody that you love, somebody you haven't talked to in years that did right by you. Shoot them a note, shoot them a text, make somebody's day a little bit of magic today.
Appreciate that. I see the comment you wrote. Love this industry. I've seen it, man. So thank you very much. Let's do it again.
It's a blast, man. As always. Until next time.
Take care. Well, that was fun and very meaningful to me. As you guys know, Jordan and I, he brought me into this industry. We did the podcast. I never anticipated where this was going. So only thing left, I know we're a little bit over time, but I'm so glad that we had that time with Jordan. Just want to go through the event calendar, but first, I want to have a quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Strategic PM, the magazine for property management entrepreneurs and executives. If you go online to strategicpm.com today, you're going to find an entire website full of content written about your industry and by your peers. And it's completely free to sign up. Just go ahead and click on the create a free account right in the upper right-hand corner. When you click on that, not only can you create a digital account, but you can actually add your mailing address and we will send you a free 1-year subscription of the print magazine, which will be showing up in your offices every single quarter. So if you take a look inside the magazine, what you're gonna see is that we are focused on growth. We've got 5 pillars of Strategic PM: vision, strategy, culture, marketing, and experience. You're going to be seeing some great high-class content from some of the best thought leaders in the industry talking about the matters that matter the most to your business. So sign up for free today at strategicpm.com and look for the magazine in your office. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Jordan is truly a treasure for the industry. I know we went a little long today, but I've got no regrets because it was amazing what he has to share. So I just want to basically go through the event calendar and then we'll sign off. So let's jump in. All right. A week from now, if you enjoyed this content and you want to learn how to grow your company, I would encourage you guys to check out our special training. We're actually having a 90-minute training next Thursday on February 22nd. It's called Learn to Love Closing Again. It's in honor of February and Valentine's Day. It's a 90-minute closing. I'm going to share some amazing tips that I know that you may know and have forgotten, or you've never heard before, that will change the way you look at sales. My goal for this session is truly not just to make you a better salesperson and closer, but to make you love selling and to make your prospects love you. So next Thursday, hope to see you there. We're also packing up and sending the booth off. We're really excited about the local conferences starting. February 28th and 29th, we've got the North Carolina Property Management Conference. We've got some of our team going there. I know a bunch of our vendor friends are excited about that. There's going to be a ton of parties. So if you're on the East Coast and you're in that area, highly encourage it. For the West Coast friends, we're going all the way to the other side of the state. So Jen, who you saw give the scoreboard update, will be speaking March 28th and 29th. The California and ARPM State is in conference. If Jen speaking wasn't enough, I would also let you know it's in Napa Valley. If you're into that kind of thing like I am, it sounds like a great place to go. So hope to see you there. I'll be there as well. But of course, it's Napa Valley. I couldn't say no. A little bit more in the middle of the country in April 8th and 9th, Denver is having their annual conference. And this year they're expanding into a 2-day event. So you can sign up online. Again, Jen and I will actually be speaking at that conference together. So we've got some great stuff. I went last year. It was just been a 1-day conference up until this point, but I'm really excited about it. And of course, we've got Broker Owner coming up after that. Also in April in Amelia Island, Florida, my hometown, still about 8 hours away from me from a drive. So I'm sure deciding if I'm going to fly there or drive there, but I will not miss a Broker Owner. And Rentscale will be there. And I'm sure all of our vendor friends will be there. And we're excited to see you there. So thanks for sticking around for an extra extended episode. I had a lot of fun today. Did you? Let us know in the comments. Did I miss any events that I should be promoting? Are there any topics you want us to cover? How much did you agree and disagree with what Jordan and I talked about what's happening in the industry and where it's going? We do the show live. Got a lot of great interaction today. We do the show live because I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love you to actually be feeding us the questions and be part of this show. That's it for this week. I want to thank Jordan for all the work he's done in the industry and for making the time to join me today. I want to thank Jen and the Rentscale team for putting together all that data that we shared. Please make sure to follow us on your platform of choice. We go live on Facebook, we go live on YouTube, we go live on LinkedIn, and we go live on X. That's what they call it these days. So you can find us on any of those. I appreciate all of your support over these last 5 years, and I hope you'll come to our special training next week, Learn to Love Closing Again. The link is in the comment section below. And that's what's happening this week in PM.